Hello and welcome to today's NinjaTrader ecosystem event using OrderFlow Labs with NinjaTrader. My name is Chris and I'm a platform representative at NinjaTrader. And before we start, I do have a few housekeeping notes. This webinar is presented by NinjaTrader LLC, which is the technology company responsible for developing and supporting the NinjaTrader trading software. Brokerage-related questions should be directed to NinjaTrader Brokerage using the phone number or the email on the screen. And lastly, if you are new to NinjaTrader, please make sure you sign up for your free NinjaTrader demo with real-time market data. Our platform is always free for advanced charting, strategy backtesting, and trade simulation. You could get your free demo account by following the link on the screen. Before I turn the mic over to Leo and Job, it is important to understand that futures, foreign currency, and options trading contain substantial risk and is not suitable for every investor. It is possible to lose all or more than the initial investment. Risk capital is money that can be lost without jeopardizing one financial security or lifestyle. Only risk capital should be used for trading, and only those with sufficient risk capital should consider trading. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Also, please remember that these are a training session and not a solicitation nor recommendation, but simply educational in nature. Thanks again for joining us today. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome to the NinjaTrader webinar room, Leo and Job.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So I'm going to start the screen share here and make sure I don't share the wrong information. Can you guys see the OrderFlow Labs presentation?
Looks good, Leo.
Great. So I want to welcome everyone to the OrderFlow Labs and NinjaTrader webinar. I appreciate you for attending. And I also want to remind you that futures trading contains substantial risk and is not suitable for all investors. And past performance is not indicative of future results. So who's OrderFlow Labs? We're just a group of diehard traders and a couple of coding wizards. And we got together to build up a community of traders and tools to help folks execute when in the futures market using order flow. So it was a collective effort of our personal work within our team through our experience trading the futures markets. And our goal was to really help not only ourselves, but other traders, both new and experienced, gain that confidence, help you refine your edge in trading. OrderFlow Labs launched in 2021. And after 2 years, we've grown from 8 studies and the Ninja community, I think we call them indicators. But we grew from 8 studies, and today we have about 24, 25, give or take. Today, we won't have time to review all of the studies and tools that we have to offer, but more of an overview of what's out there. And there's more information available on our website and on YouTube that you can take a look at. So let's start to dive in. As far as tools that are available and what we have to offer, we follow in 3 categories. So those are defined as structure. This is, order flow based structure, where we're looking at larger time frame areas of that we want to analyze for that larger time frame area. So that's the structure element. We have several areas that focus on that. And then we have the execution. This is the flashy, things that have dots and circles, that everyone gets excited about. And that's the execution component, right? So that's we're analyzing order flow, speed, time and sales, delta information, the difference between ask and bid volume, et cetera. And we'll dive into that a little bit. And then finally, automation. This is a big one for me personally, is let's automate common setups, such as, retracements from large moves, and put a zone around that. So that would be what we call buy sell zones, or trap traders. That's liquidity zones. Or, hey, I want to automatically draw, yesterday's high low, overnight high low, and other information that we'll dive into. So that's what we talk about when we talk about automation. Yeah. So first, go ahead, Job.
Yeah, and when we all came together, we brought together our experiences in key concepts that we're looking at and analyzing for a planning aspect. Go back to that last one. And so with this, you have your structural components, your execution, your automation. Your automation is something that you want on there to be aware of at all times. I often say that if you're jumping on a trampoline and you decide to do a flip, you need to know where your feet land. And so having the awareness of the things around you, that market generated information and or the liquidity zones, buy, sell zones, so forth, having that in front of your face, therefore you don't have to step away or do something else to come back to this. Keeps you in check with the auction at hand. But structure precedes execution, and so as any trader would say, is that you have to come into a key structural component in order to then look at your quicker time frames like execution components. And we'll hit the execution components, but let's step into the structure aspect of this. And what structural tools do we use at OrderFlow Labs? Well, my first and favorite that I use primarily, go ahead into that one, is the Job pivots. So the Job pivots are derived from the volume profile to understand the location of current inventory and provide a map of targets or control upon the session. Now, understand the pivots, we have to understand that relationship in the auction. And so for anybody that's new to a volume profile or anything like that, this is also an automation component that maps in aspects of creating the highest area of interest and equilibrium between the buyers and sellers. So that provides areas of rebid and reoffer, and also understanding the redistribution of inventory based upon the possible extensions or contraction of the auction itself. Utilize this on a session-to-session basis is primary, and so I always say, structure precedes execution. Now, you can look at structure from different time frames, and so we also view this on a weekly aspect. So zooming out in order to gauge our awareness, like I said, with the trampoline, you got to know where your feet are landing, you got to know where you're at. And so let's go to the next one. And so not only intraday are those going to help guide that control and decision-making aspect, but it is key component of my trade prep. And so utilizing this to base all my primary preparation as well as the weekly in order to find not only where we are on that current session, but the overlapping sessions and how that auction is building, time framing, and so forth. And as the auction develops, like think about where we're at right now. We had rally up, we had a consolidation, contraction range, we had a push. Now, where are we going? But being able to isolate those zones will not only provide patience on a time where you're seeing something actively occur and quickly occur, but allow you to have that visual component and be able to wait for key areas for response. So there's another structural tool that is utilized, go to the next one, that is similar to that, the session delta pivots. And they display like the Job pivots, but it's based upon different parameters. So by isolating large blocks of delta volume or aggressive market orders, the SDPs consist of the most dominant zone of delta for multi-session analysis. And with this information, a pivot is constructed, but also a zone of value forming around those orders that are assessed, and so utilized for structural planning and so forth. And as far as guiding and utilizing different structural tools, we do provide parameters and guides for the ability to differentiate how to isolate and work yourself down the path between structure first and then execution and so forth. And so in utilizing the SDPs here, you also have a weekly view of this, or a weekly delta pivot, to view those contracting expansion ranges and engage where that aggressive activity comes in. Go ahead and hit over to the next one. So we also have SDP history, and that's something that's discussed, or that's something that is designed into the tool set. Now, it's discussed as far as all-encompassing reading with the Job pivots, but with the SDP history, It utilizes that information from the STPs to show activity in prior zones as well as movement of the pivots themselves. Think of this as like one time framing. So if anybody here is a TPO person or understands time framing, the market is moving in one direction without breaching the prior, then you can get a sense of that, that directional move, that consolidation, and that move out of a zone. And so with that, there's different concepts that are utilized with the STP history, whether it be voids and clusters, areas of clustered STPs of that aggressive auction activity, which are kind of like a yield sign, where it gets kind of like quicksand, and then voids where things accelerate and expand. But then there's continuation shifts and accumulation. And so with the STP history and part of the automation component, the notches or turns in those are also automated in order to show where those elbow turns are and so forth. But structure always precedes execution. And so this is a primary part of planning for any type of activity before utilizing an executional component. And without further ado, Leo, I believe you're going to be stepping into some of the execution tools.
Absolutely. So now that we've covered the the structure component, the other the next step really is the execution, right? So you've mapped out your levels or areas of interest. You've got you've done all your prep. You understand where the where you want to interact for the day, and now comes the execution, right? The one thing that I hear the most from traders is entering too early, getting stopped out, miss the entry, then you have FOMO getting in. So one thing that using order flow in the short time frame can do is help you improve those entry points, right? And because we're observing actual buying and selling in the market and not learning or leaning on moving averages or information that's delayed, you can hone in on patterns from between buyers and sellers that can help aid in those entry locations. And we definitely, help, with that, and you'll see that in a moment. When to trade, when not to trade. So an awareness of the order flow activity that you're seeing can help you identify, high probability opportunities, but also can help you when to stay out of a trade, right? One of the biggest pieces is, well, I know when to trade. I also need to know when not to trade, right? So we can visually show areas where we don't want to necessarily engage, or potentially areas where we do want to engage. So that's important. And then finally, when you're able to discern this information, this relationship between buyers and sellers in the auction, you have a better understanding of what's happening. And with that better understanding, that gives you, confidence in your trading skills and your ability to execute. So some of the key components and concepts that we use within order flow with our analysis to help with that is one, efficiency. How efficient are buyers or sellers able to move markets? Absorption. So absorption is basically there's aggressive or buying or selling and prices are moving. Exhaustion can help you identify that final push at the end of a move, right? It's exhaustive, base activity. So we have some things that cover that. Aggression can help, see the aggressive response after we've seen exhaustion or in a continuation of a breakout.
Hey, Leo, you can double click the image below as well, and that will show while you're talking.
Oh, nice. So here in this image, I think this is a screenshot from today. Is that right, Job?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. So here we have a couple of the components that we'll show in a minute. But today, this is an example from today. And, here is an example of that exhaustion point. So when we say exhaustion, we're looking for extremely high amounts of delta, which you see colored in these candles here with what's called delta map, but also with the exhaustion absorption detector is probably more viewed as a traditional indicator, where it's reading the time and sales data and it's showing you, hey, we have exhaustion. And now we're showing initiation away from that exhaustive point. And so that's what that exhaustion absorption detector is going to be showing you. But we can also see that with the color of the candles based upon their printing based upon delta. So kind of going back here to the list, then we look for trend changes, pauses in the auction, speed of orders, so the speed at orders coming in on the time and sales, and then finally that ask minus bid volume, so looking at delta. So where do we marry up with these components? One is market efficiency. The next one is EAD, exhaustion absorption detector, which we just kind of looked at. The Job pinch, this looks for trend changes and potential pauses in the auction, potential reversals, et cetera, et cetera. And then Dominator is the speed of tape, right? So we're looking at the speed of the ask volume and the bid volume and doing tons of comparisons to identify, who's ultimately coming in and aggressing into the market. And then for ask minus bid volume, so delta, we have delta dominance detector, better delta recon tape, and then finally delta map, which we'll cover here in just a moment. So I'm going to pause there and we'll dive in to the chart. And we'll go over a few of the things that the execution elements here. Okay, so one of the things that I mentioned is that EAD, exhaustion absorption detector. So this is what that looks like on the screen. This also paired with delta map, it gives you that high conviction, to look for this opportunity here. So we have the EAD, this Dominator here is looking for speed of tape. So it's the speed at which orders are coming through. So that's Dominator. And then Delta Map, which is a new release from our standpoint. It basically takes the summation of ask minus bid volume over a period of time, does some comparisons in the background to figure out, how on the spectrum of standard deviations, where does this current delta fit, and it's smoothed out. So it's not taking every single bar data, but it's smoothed out to make it easier for you to visually see, who is aggressing into the auction. And we have elements within the EDU section that, educate you to say, all right, well, when I'm seeing this at area of interest, et cetera, what I'm looking for. And this would be, kind of one of those examples here. So here from the Job pivots, which, Job covered. So we have our structural element, we have our extension from that pivot. We are looking for at this area that we're interested in, which would be in this case, the 1B delta map, is showing that we have potential exhaustion here. And I think we were just below overnight low as well. So that's what we're looking for. And when I said, hey, earlier, where do we want to stay out of a trade? Well, we can see on this rotation down that it's just, it's selling, right? And we can see that, instead of having to learn how to tape read, or maybe you haven't learned how to tape read yet, we can show on the candle directly that this is very aggressive selling. And then we come to an extreme move where it's gotten so aggressive that we found, based on prior patterns, that this can be a potential turning point. And since we're already at an area of interest, this would be one of those elements that we would be looking for from an execution standpoint to then get engaged into the market. So this has, delta map, some pivot, the Job pivot, and the EAD and Dominator. And you can see at the end of the day, some of this stuff, will definitely fire, especially with the Netflix earnings today. It's a little wild. So obviously we ignore, end of day activity, but throughout the day we're looking to use this as a map. And Job, if you want to kind of highlight some of the opportunities right off of the pivot, I know that you mentioned
so
taking rebids or reoffers off of it.
Go to the start of the day.
Cool.
All right. So in this example here, the green is the Joe pivot, and being that it is that equilibrium of activity in the volume profile, it has a high propensity of being a magnet. And so we opened up well above it, and we pushed up into that zone a few times. And upon return to the pivot, what we're looking for is the activity or interest built around it. And so in that consolidation that went back and forth, what you'll see on today's aspect was that we had a nice volume build in that section, as well as coming off of multiple reoffers from yesterday's and the Globex session. However, in looking at what is occurring here, you have, for instance, the second period of the day, the second 30-minute period was inside of the first, and that signaled a bit of balance on this aspect. Therefore, the bottom red line target, the first target on the day, is a zone then to trade this in a manner of balance. And so after coming and reoffering pivot aggressively the first time, go back one more, no.
Oh, here.
Right there. So we see an aggressive activity pushing down in, okay? And nobody's perfect. You don't have to hit that one. That's fine. But we see that somebody's active there. So upon return to that right here, then there's opportunity to engage with the seller against structure in order to drive down into a target. And so pushing down into a target and then seeing the flip on the delta map matched with the multiple components as it went with allows you to then position with tight risk against that target 1B in order to drive back into pivot and look for interest back above. And so what you'll see is you drive back in, and there's a few moments where there's an attempt to reoffer, but they weren't making much progress. And as soon as they got above, boom, rebid and drive up. And so as somebody who ends the day flat and not pushing positions overnight and so forth, this type of activity is something that I'll work back and forth intraday in order to maximize my ability to take rotations in the auction.
Awesome. Well, I know we're short on time, so I want to cover the last component here, which is the automation piece. And we'll jump back into the charts here in just a second to show you, but just kind of set the stage. Automation from our standpoint is, I want to reduce the time I'm in front of my chart, right? I don't want to have to draw every level that's important to me. I want to automate that as much as possible. Personally, I'm one that's really keen on taking rebids and reoffers from areas that have already shown aggressive activity. I wrote a blog post about it. It's on our website. It's called "Don't Catch a Falling Knife." But essentially, that is automated. So other things that we automated here. So MGI, MGI is the most basic form of data that you can get from the market, right? So those are reference points: prior day high, prior day low, overnight high, overnight low, the RTH mid, the 24-hour mid, your VWAP, so RTH VWAP, 24-hour VWAP. Probably a lot of the things that you're utilizing today as a trader, intraday trader, but it's all built in to one single study. So you can literally pull one single study that has all this information. You can select what you want to show or not show. So it's really powerful from that standpoint, and it reduces the amount of time that you're sitting there drawing lines. Secondly, buy sell zones. I just mentioned this is a automation to draw retracement areas. It's not Fibonacci. It's just you're able to say, All right, well, if I want to draw a pullback from a 10-point range or a 30-point, 40-point range, we recommend to match it up with harmonic rotations, and we provide that data every morning. But it's a way to automate, drawing retracements from prior legs, swing highs and swing lows. And then finally, liquidity zones. This is our trap traders. You guys are probably familiar with trap traders. This is where there's tons of delta coming in from one side of the auction from an ask minus bid volume perspective, and we basically identify that by saying if a certain amount of delta hasn't been able to move price, and then the price moves away from that area, rapidly without any type of counter response, then we draw that zone as, we call that a liquidity zone, because there's tons of liquidity there. And since it's always in one version of delta, either positive or negative, then it would become, that trap trader setup to where the return of that area would provide a response, to allow those trap traders to get out, or that passive participant to continue to engage in that area. So we basically highlight some an automated way to draw some of that stuff that you may be already familiar with or looking for on the footprint chart. So if I go back to the chart here, we'll pull NinjaTrader back up. And so, there's an example here. I'll actually pull up in the indicator section. So we have our MGI, and we can see, these are all the things that we can display. Obviously don't recommend, hey, we're not going to throw everything on a chart from an MGI perspective, but you can select what's important to you. Is the initial balance something that you want to display? Is it yesterday's high and low? Is it, your VWAPs, even the opening range? You can see that's a transparent background here in the center of the screen. So this is really just ease of use, makes that you don't have to draw this. It automatically updates at the end of the day. When the Globex session opens, these lines will update automatically. And so you don't have to worry about, erasing them or drawing them or anything like that. It's already done for you. So you can see there's a laundry list of things that you're able to select from based upon your personality as a trader and what you're looking for from an MGI perspective. Then finally, the buy sell zones that I mentioned earlier, these are simply drawing, automatically retracements from prior legs. So we're looking at this swing leg here. It's going to draw this retracement zone. So this would be that area that we would look for engagement. And then from this leg down, obviously there's a reoffer spot here that, from this move down. So this is just automating, basically the most opportunity for those retracement zones to be either rebid or reoffered. So it's automatically done for you. You don't have to draw them manually, which is what I used to do. And then, that MGI information comes in not only daily, but a weekly and a monthly. So you're able to, take that larger time frame information, put it on a 60-minute chart so you have that longer duration view, but then also, look at that executional component to where you need to know, what's that overnight high low, and then on your longer time frame, it will give you this, prior week, prior month value area, VWAPs, and all the other components that you might be looking for. So I'll pause there. Job, do you want to cover anything?
Especially with the higher time frame MGI stuff, having the awareness of that, we come down into a zone, you finish 2 sessions, and then you need to be aware of the fact that where we came from was month's value high or something like that. And so knowing how to traverse that zone and so forth is absolutely key. But in summary, so structure precedes execution. You want to find structural levels and be able to map that with planning and ease. Identifying high quality execution opportunities, especially with the speed of tape aspect of this. The dominator is more like a Louisville slugger. And then you have the EAD, which is going to show that exhaustion absorption and mix with the other tools and reduce your screen time, being able to be aware of the opportunities that may be missed with MGI especially, and making the most of that when you zoom out and execute your planning. But within our Discord, we have a structured content such as weekly prep, morning prep, end of day recaps, and also it encompasses discussions and utilizations or reads within the tools. And so there's hundreds of hours of EDU content or webinars discussion. But in total, I personally hold prep and discussion 7 times throughout the week. It would honestly be better if I had the voice of an angel like Leo, but everybody seems to put up with that, and that's fine. And so with as far as the customer service aspect of this, there's help desk ticket opportunity within that range where we can then troubleshoot any issues within your platform one-on-one with you at any time, and you can speak with anybody within the platform to know that we'll if we're busy, we'll let you know, but for the most part, everybody gets things resolved very, very quickly. I really appreciate everybody stepping on, and don't forget that there's a promo code here, Ninja Webinar. You can utilize that here in diving into OrderFlow Labs. And I believe there was a question about licensing, but the OFL tools provided are based, we have a lifetime, or we have a free, you could be utilized with the free version of NT. And so the lifetime aspect is not required for that. Any questions?
One thing, yeah. So one thing with the lifetime license, obviously NinjaTrader, as somebody trading order flow, you want to be able to see the volume profile, and other aspects that we don't necessarily have for. So the lifetime license obviously gives you volume profile, VWAP, and some other things, but the tools that we put together work on both versions, the free and the lifetime license. So there's definitely a benefit to utilizing the lifetime license because you get access to your TPO charts, market profile, volume profile, and things like that. So that's it. So you guys can find us at orderflowlabs.com. On Twitter, we're at OrderFlow Labs. Since we're doing this webinar today, we did put a promo code together, so you can go to our website and sign up for the use the code Ninja Webinar. But before we end, we've got a few minutes here for a Q&A. So we'll just kind of read through some of the questions here. Job, I'll let you pick up any if you see anything.
Yeah, so are you competing with order flow tools like Bookmap? No, we have, and Bookmap does a great job of what they do. We are looking at information from a different aspect of this, and rather than simply, rather than engaging with aspects that they may be engaging with, we've derived our work from different points of view. And so I think that there's a lot of complementary things that can be visualized. However, this is simply something that we personally use and have made available. Can we show a chart of NQ with time and sales, trap trade orders, same chart? I believe that if we run through a time and sales, then we would have to do a sequence of activity on a replay, and that would essentially take time through the auction. I'm not sure that that's possible at this point. However, with NQ, potentially we can show, Leah, do you have an NQ chart queued?
Yeah, let's see.
Is the data included or is that a separate cost? Let's see here. So it is available with the free version. Are your indicators a way to enhance the effects of NinjaTrader or OrderFlow? NinjaTrader does an excellent job of displaying exactly what's needed. And so to say that it would be an enhancement of NinjaTrader order flow would be a lie, because they're making the data available. What we're doing is consolidating the data in order to visualize this appropriately. Let's see, the equivalent indicator on our end that detects iceberg orders. And so iceberg orders are very common, and we can see those day in and day out with sessions. Now, the responsive nature of them are the kickers. And so that's a base component of different things you'll see, like with the dominator, the EOD, the exhaustion absorption, or the EAD, exhaustion absorption detector. And so with the iceberg orders, one way that you can visualize this is with the liquidity zones that Leo kind of went over. And therefore, when you have a very aggressive market participant that dives in and creates those types of sequences, then and it goes adversely from that positioning, then that is certainly mapped. But it's also a component of multiple different tools based upon the relationship or response within the environment. Let's see here. Hi, what is the best confirmation tool from inventory? So the best confirmation tool from inventory would be the Holy Grail. And anybody that tells you they have that is a lie. So what I can say upon that is that first structure, and we map this out in the different aspects. And then as we engage around key structural components, then we look for the activity on the faster time frame executional component, which you can see at the top here at the 1A, and that sell side activity. Even though it was very aggressive and looking very promising there, that activity was actually displaying a different story. And so that top blue line there, where you have that red indication there, you can see that run out of steam, participants step back in, drive that down, targeting back to magnet, which would be pivot on the session. Win rate, and what is your stop loss 1-to-1? And so on NQ, everybody has, and I primarily trade NQ, everybody has different risk requirements based upon account size and tolerance. And so with that, that's as far as stop loss goes. Yeah, I typically won't allow something to push against a 7-point on NQ. Do OFL, let's see here. Thank you, said OFL to work on free version of Ninja, yes. I'm trying to, did I miss any questions here? Does Discord room come with, yeah, so the Discord room is a, it's part of OFL. And so in order to have tools, you need to have the educational component of this. And so that educational component is available within different sections of the Discord on OFL. Did I miss anything?
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything that we have time for. I know that I want to be sensitive to the time allotted, and so we're right up at that 40-minute mark. So just want to say thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. If you have further questions, you can email us at support@OrderFlow Labs. You can find us on Twitter @OrderFlow Labs, and you can find us at orderflowlabs.com, as well as our YouTube channel has tons of information. Again, there is a promo that's $80 off the first month. If you wanted to sign up as a NinjaTrader, you can utilize that code, and that is NinjaTrader webinar.
Yeah, thank you everybody for attending.
All righty. And how do I get the NinjaTrader software for the lifetime lease? So NinjaTrader, I'm sure we'll be able to answer that question. That sounds like a NinjaTrader question. I believe there will be a recording posted. So we will turn it back over to the NinjaTrader team.
All right. Thanks again for OrderFlow Labs for taking the time to share with us today. If you enjoyed today's session, we hope you'll join us for future webinars. We would like to remind you that the information provided in this was that of OrderFlow Labs and not of NinjaTrader. All information was for educational purposes and should not be construed as trading advice. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to see you in future webinars. Happy trading from all of us at NinjaTrader Ecosystem.